Thank you, Peter. All right, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the ACE Instructional Design and IT Learning Community-sponsored webinar on authoring software. I'm Tanya Lee Martin, Associate Director for Communications with the University of California's Integrated Pest Management Program. I'm an ecstatic ACE member and, of course, your webinar facilitator for today. And I just want to mention that if you're not a current member of ACE, please consider joining. I'm going to put that info in the chat, especially if you enjoy events like this one. And without further ado, I'll get on to my hosting duties and introduce today's presenters. I'm excited to introduce Peter Cassina and Joan York. So Peter Cassina is the Content Development Supervisor at the University of California Statewide Integrated Pest Management Program. He studied horticulture and plant physiology, but also added vocational education and instructional design. During more than 2 decades of experience in agricultural extension projects in the Americas, Africa, and South Asia, Peter designed and developed many interactive and engaging online and in-person courses for agricultural professionals. He is passionate about sharing his knowledge and fostering growth in the fields of both plant science and education. And Joan York is an assistant extension specialist and the online learning manager for Oklahoma State University Extension. She oversees Oklahoma State University Extension's catalog of online courses for staff and the public. She holds a master's in curriculum development and educational technology from the University of Nevada, hey, a neighbor to us in California, and a master's in English from the University of Oklahoma. All right, so Peter is going to start us off, followed by Joan. Please put questions that you have in the chat. We will have a very short time to answer 1, maybe 2 questions between speakers. And of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. Okay, so Peter, please go ahead and start off your presentation part, authoring software, experience with Articulate Rise 360 and Adobe Captivate.
Okay, thank you, Daniele, for the introduction. So in my part, I'll be talking about the experience with Adobe Captivate in UCIPM, University of California Statewide Integrated Pest Management Program. We have started developing online courses more than 10 years ago, around 2011, and currently we managed over 20 online courses. Our target audience are primarily growers and pest management professionals. The topics of our courses include pesticide safety and safe and effective pesticide application, including legal requirements, personal protective equipment, and obviously management of many specific pests and diseases. Our courses are self-paced and the average length is between 1 and 2.5 hours. And a shameless plug here that 2 of our recent courses received a gold award from the ACE Critique and Award program. We offer for most of our online courses continuing education units from number of CEU awarding agencies. You can see their logos on the right of the screen. It's California Department of Agriculture, Structural Pest Control Board, Certified Crop Advisor, that's a Crop Science Society of America, International Society of Arboriculture, and Arizona Department of Agriculture. And obviously these agencies have the requirement that the continuing education units courses have to meet. Particularly, the California Department of Pesticide Regulation is very strict. They strengthened their requirements for the online courses last year, and their requirements to a certain degree dictate how our courses are designed. Participants must spend required time in the course. If the course is based principally on the text, it's much harder to estimate how much time the participants need to spend on each screen. Hence, most of our courses are actually narrated, where we can dictate the speed and the time spent on each screen and each module. Learners cannot skip any part of the content, cannot scroll fast forward, but we want to offer them opportunity to go back if they want to listen to some screen or part of the course again. So that influences how we design the courses again. And I'll be referring to the CEU requirements as I am giving examples of some interactions and how we design in modules. Last thing I want to mention is that all our courses are available for free, but for people who want to get the certificate with continuing education units, we charge the fee to cover the administrative costs related to submitting the reports to these agencies and keeping the records for necessary time. Because I don't know what's the background of each of you, I will just spend 2 or 3 screens on describing the process of online course development. As all designers, we obviously want to include a diverse content, text, images, audio, video, interactions. That content is put together into course modules through the authoring software. And that's the part of the online course development that we will be focusing on today. But it's important to remember that the modules then are plugged into the learning management system, and the capacities and the way how the learning management system works may also be influencing how the course modules are designed. And I think that will be particularly true for Joan's part of presentation. In order for the course modules to communicate with the learning management system, it's a both-way communication. The modules have to be developed in the standard format. And the 2 most common formats for the modules are SCORM and XAPI. In UC-IPM, we produce all the modules in the SCORM. The advantage is that if we decide to change the learning management system we use, because the courses are done in the standard format, we should be able to relatively easily reuse them in a different learning management system. And why we care about the learning management system? Well, that's the program that monitors the progress of each learner through the course, records the progress, and decides whether all requirements were met in order to issue, to allow the progress through the course, and at the end issue the certificate. And the last thing to remember is that all that is accessed through the internet browser, right? Nowadays, practically all our learners access the learning management through the internet browser. And so again, the type of browser that's being used and the device type affects the interaction with the learning management system and all the content. Meaning, when you develop the online course, it's really important to test it in different browsers and on different devices to make sure that all the components and the progress through the course works for all your learners. In UC-IPM, when we are developing the online courses, we are using a systematic design of instruction approach. That's from the Dick and Carey model. There are many other models like rapid prototyping and ADDIE, but irrespectively of what approach for the design you use, it's quite important to know what authoring software you will be using from the early stage of the course development, because the abilities of the authoring software influence what type of interactions and what type of instructional strategy approaches you will use in your course. In UC-IPM, we have used over those 13-14 years 4 different authoring softwares. Started with the Adobe Publisher, later on used iSpring. Both these are based on PowerPoint slides, but because they were not meeting the necessarily accessibility standards, in 2017 we have done evaluation of options on the market at the time, and we have opted for Adobe Captivate, which had the best accessibility ratings at the time. And for few courses that we have, when we have converted pre-recorded video presentations into online courses with an interactive overlay, we have used H5P, which is a HTML5 package network. It's a plugin into content management system that allows to do such conversion. And as a learning management system, we use eXtension Foundation Campus because our mother organization, University of California Agriculture Nature Resources, is a member of eXtension Foundation. We have a free access to the learning management system, which is based on software called Moodle. Moodle is very versatile and customizable. However, the user interface in aesthetics is a little bit less intuitive. And because it's an open source software, there are some issues with limited integrations and technical support from the developers. However, because we can use it for free and we can have a limited number of courses in it, and it has have the e-commerce plugin that's very important for us, that enables us charging for the certificates, it's a suitable option that we are now using for almost 10 years, I think, or 9 years. So here is an example how our course looks like when you log in as a user into the Moodle of e-extension. We have the welcome screen, then we have the series of modules that you can go through in the order that we defined. You cannot skip through. Learning management system tracks your progress through each module, and if you meet all the requirements, allows you to open the next one. At the end, to meet a continuing education requirements, everybody has to go through the final test and can get the certificate. And for most courses, we also like the pesticide labels or different charts that the learners need in different phases of the course. So as I have mentioned, we use Adobe Captivate. And when I was preparing for this presentation, I digged a little bit into the history and realized that it's actually not an original Adobe product. The basic code was developed in early 2000 by a company called Macromedia. And those of you who participate and remember the early 2000, that was the same company that developed the Dreamweaver, which was the web page development software at a certain time. And it was purchased by Adobe in around 2005. Adobe created many iterations of this software over the years, but my understanding is that later in 2018-19, they hit the wall with how that software can be further developed, the code, the basic code, in order to meet current requirements and standards of internet. And so they started developing new version, which is coded from the scratch. They call it a new Adobe Captivate. There is a little bit of confusion with the name because they renamed the old Captivate a Captivate Classic, and they call the new one just Adobe Captivate, which may be confusing for new users. I am excited about the new Captivate. It's much more intuitive, much less overwhelming than the previous one. The big disadvantage for us, for the community of users, is that all the courses that were developed in Captivate cannot be opened and updated in the new Captivate. We have to practically redo them from the scratch, redesign them, because the two codes that are behind are not compatible. So that is a big disadvantage. I'll be talking today about online courses that we have developed in the Classic, because that's what we were using for last 7 years. So when you open Adobe Classic, you can start the course development from a different perspective. You can do the responsive project. That course developed as a responsive course will be adjusting depending on the device and screen size that you are using. There is an option of virtual reality project that I have never used, or software simulations and video demonstrations, or conversion of PowerPoint. But for us, we were always starting from the blank project. And the approach is kind of a similar as if you are designing a PowerPoint for a presentation. It's a series of screens or slides with the content that can be different in each of them, and it's a linear process. Size of the screen you can define. You cannot really scroll down as you would do on the web page. It's just the content that appears on the screen. And what I will do in the remaining time of my presentation, I'll show you a few examples of screens and especially interactions that we have done in Adobe Captivate. Some interactions are done based on a Captivate template, and some interactions we have coded from the scratch. Now I have recorded screenshots, so the quality may be a little bit suboptimal on your device where you are watching this presentation, but let's give it a try. So the first two examples are from our course on airblast sprayer calibration. Let me play this. This is a common screen, and I think I need to share the screen so that you can actually hear the narration. So let me stop sharing and start again. Share sound. So this is a common screen with image, text, and voice narration.
When calibrating, be sure to use only clean water and never a spray mix. Be sure to wear proper personal protective equipment, PPE, such as eye protection, chemical-resistant gloves, such as nitrile gloves, long-sleeve shirt and long pants, socks, and closed-toed shoes or boots in order to reduce exposure to any pesticide residues that may be present. Make sure to check your pesticide label for any additional PPE requirements.
So as you can hear, it's a pretty simple screen. There is no interaction. The content is timed. There is a white space at the bottom, which is left for the closed captions because we use the voice narration. Our target for each screen is between 1 and 2 minutes. And after that time, after the content is presented, the learner needs to click next and proceed to the next screen. That is one of the requirements of the continuing education units. The second example I have is a screen based on embedded video. So that video starts to play when the learner enters this screen.
Mark off at least 100 feet and use a stopwatch to measure the tractor's actual speed. Be sure to note what tractor gear and RPM you are running at. To get a more accurate speed measurement, you may choose to use a longer distance or repeat the measurement multiple times and calculate an average. Your measurement will most likely be in seconds per 100 feet. For example, 32 seconds per 100 feet traveled. The speed is calculated as distance traveled divided by time. In our case, 100 feet traveled in 32 seconds equals 3.125 feet traveled per second. To convert feet per minute, multiply the speed by 60, since 1 minute equals 60 seconds. In our case, 3.125 times 60 equals 187.5 feet traveled per minute.
So again, no interaction, but you could see that we have overlaid the text that was timed together with the narration over the video, not to overwhelm cognitively the learner, but the information comes in small pieces. And the third example of common screen is embedded video in form of cartoon animations. We use often cartoon animations. I think it makes the courses a bit lighter. Let's look at that.
This section will provide an overview of how herbicides injure plants and describe what different paths of herbicide absorption and symptom patterns may reveal about herbicides that may have caused the injury. Herbicides vary greatly in what types of plants they target, how they are absorbed by the plant, and whether they are transported through the plant or not. These herbicide characteristics can create different damage patterns and clues that can be used to help narrow down the possible herbicides that cause the injury.
And what we have done here is that the last screen of that cartoon animation is then converted into a branching slide where the learner can choose in which order they will proceed further through the course into the next sections. But these are all passive, kind of without any interaction screens. They, I would guess, form maybe 50% of content of our courses, and the other 50% we try to make more interactive. So here is an example of interaction that we've made based on the template in Captivate, and it's called tabs. So the learner is asked to go through the individual tabs, and they can proceed to the next screen only after they finish each tab of the content. They can go in any order they want, and they can also spend as much time as they want on each tab. And thank you for the reminder, Tanyeli. I've noted the time. So obviously there is no narration. This is just a text-based. And this is an example of the screen that's kind of a harder evaluate when we are submitting the courses for continuing education units, how much time the learners will spend on that particular screen. And now it proceeded again into another screen with cartoon animation, and you can see example of closed captions in that white space at the bottom. So that was interaction called taps. The next interaction we used number of times is an accordion. Very similar principle. The learner have to click on each component or the segment of the accordion, again read the text, can do it in any order, can return to the previous one, but cannot proceed to the next screen until they visit each segment of the accordion. Those are very easy to do because you have the template, you just decide on the colors, on the text of the images that you put in, but there is no programming behind. And the last interaction, which is not necessarily part of the course flow, but it's also pretty important, is the table of content. Adobe provides quite a good customization of the table of content. We have two ways how to access it, either from the bottom bar or from the top right corner. As you can see, the table of content includes all the main screens, but if there is branching, then also the subscreens, and it has check marks to monitor the progress for the learner. So what we had to modify in our courses is that learners can go back and visit any of the slides that they have already visited using the table of content, but they cannot go ahead. Those that they haven't visited yet have to be disabled until they go through those particular screens. That was a bit of workaround. And now the last part, I want to present few interactions that we have programmed in Adobe Captivate that were not part of any template. So here is an example of what I would maybe call a heat map, but we used an image and the learner has to click on each button to reveal whether this part of plant may or may not be affected by herbicides, whether there can be an injury of each of those parts of the plant. And the learner again have to go through all of them in any order, can spend as much time on each of them, but only after all of them were checked can proceed to the next screen. So in the classic Captivate, there was no template for this. In the new Captivate, there is something which is somehow similar called a heat map, but the customization is relatively limited. What I liked in the classic Captivate is that if you learn how to program these interactions, you can practically do anything. Another example, this one is example from the knowledge check, is here, and the learner is asked what type of adjustments in the sprayer, or whether the presented adjustments of the sprayer can be used in the spring bloom time, that's represented by B, when the canopy is very small, or in the summer when the canopy is full, that's represented by letter F. And so the different options will be appearing on the screen, and the learner has to be checking which adjustment can be done in the bloom time or in the full canopy time. And I have to admit, when I was doing screen recording, I was trying to remember what were the correct and wrong answers, but it's a few years back since we developed this course, and so not everything went correctly. And in this particular case, there are, I think, 10 or 12 options. And so the learner has to go through all of them, gets immediate feedback whether that choice was correct or incorrect, and only when they went through all 10 can proceed to the next screen. There is no detailed feedback on each choice because this was already explained in the previous slide. So this is a knowledge check. All right, and in the last minute that I have, I want to present the very last interaction that I'm quite proud of, which we used again in the course on calibration. And in calibration, there is quite complex part of calculation when the learners have to go through calculation of the spray volume and flow rate and land rate, and it has many steps. This is already after everything was explained. We have two case scenarios. They can choose whether they will do the powdery mildew or the citrus strips, depending on which part of California they are from. We provide them the description of the scenario. In the right-hand side column are the known values, and on the left part of the screen, we guide them through individual calculations. There is actually 10 different steps. So they get the formulas, they get the order in which the calculations are being done, and the questions. And we expect that they do the calculations, and when they have the calculation, they check the result. We provide 3 options. They could obviously just guess, but we hope that they made calculation and will choose the one that's closest to their calculated values. If they need to, they can check how the calculation was done to verify that they did it correctly, and then they proceed to the next step, which is done in the same way. So again, a few options of what calculation results could be. They've selected either the wrong one or the correct one, have opportunity to see how the calculation was done to verify that they did a correct process, and can proceed to the next step. And the feedback that we have got from the learners is that math and calculations are very frustrating, but by breaking it into these small steps and going together with the learner through each calculation step, we have helped them to understand the logic, and they were happy that they were able to do the calculations. And that's the time that I had allocated for today. So I'll stop it here if there is any quick questions before we move to the second half of the presentation.
So you can raise your hand if you'll unmute and ask your question, or you can also put it in chat and I can ask it for you.
I do have a question. So my name is Mateus. I'm from New Mexico State University, and I work with educational media. Thanks for your presentation. It was very interesting. I'm curious about when you mentioned that when you don't use the template and you do the coding. So is the software intuitive enough that if I don't have a background in coding, I will be able to do something, or I will need like a background in programming and coding to really create some interactions?
I don't have background in coding. I did spend some time, I would say possibly a couple of days, testing, trying, failing, trying again. It's not like you don't need to know an HTML code or any other code, but you need to know that it's not the language on its own, but it's the way how Captivate calls the different effects of actions that are happening on the screen and how to do the timing. So I call it coding, but it's not really true coding. You don't need to be a coder. You just need to be patient to learn how Captivate engineers hit different actions, what terminology they used. Yeah. But if you know a little bit of HTML, that definitely can be of help.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, or Java, because there is another option which I have never used. For people who are fluent in Java language, they can do much, much more in Captivate.
I think there's a quick question in the chat that you can answer about Captivate Classic, and can you continue using classic versions?
I can respond that. Classic will be supported with updates to make sure that it meets the security requirements until 2027. In 2027, I don't know when, but in 2027, they will cut it off and they will only work on the new one. And they do not plan to help Captivate community to convert the courses from the classic into the new one. They were pretty blunt about it. You need to redo your courses.
Okay, there will be time for questions at the very end. So we're going to turn it over to Joan now.
Okay, hi. Can everybody hear and see me? Great. So I'm taking a different approach. I'm mainly going to focus on giving you a live demo of Articulate Rise. Although I do appreciate Peter's introduction, because almost everything he said about the instructional design process and different considerations going into it applied to my work with Rise as well. So let me see. I need to share my screen. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of the courses we create at Oklahoma State University Extension. We've been creating courses for about 3 years now and putting them on this platform you see here, which is based in Canvas LMS, but uses it's a special registration system that goes on top of Canvas called Catalog. And so this allows people to sign up for our courses and also integrates with a payment gateway. Unfortunately, we can't offer our courses for free because of all this software we have to pay for. So I appreciate the other options Peter was talking about. So today I was going to talk mainly about Articulate Rise, which is part of the Articulate 360 product, which also includes Articulate Storyline. I would guess that most of you have probably heard more about Storyline than Rise because it was the original product. And it's comparable to Captivate, I would say, in that you can create slides with all kinds of interactions. And basically, if you can imagine what it will look like, you can probably create it. However, Articulate Storyline, probably like Captivate, has a pretty steep learning curve. And I know Peter's probably spent years learning to master the tool to the point where he can create these beautiful interactions and course activities. Our course development process at OSU Extension is a little different in that the goal is to try to engage Extension faculty in developing their own content. So my approach is to work with them and teach them how to use the content creation tool and the LMS to create the content themselves. That way we can create more courses faster. And I also work on courses myself, but the main model is for me to coach subject matter experts like faculty as they develop their content. So Rise was a good tool for this type of process because Rise is template based and allows people to learn how to use it pretty quickly. It also makes it hard to mess up and it looks professional without any effort on our part because of the templates. It also offers a Teams account, which supports collaboration. So I was going to start by showing you what the course, what Rise looks like when it's in the finished course, kind of the finished product, and then backtrack from there. So I'm going to go to Canvas and I'll show you this Bermuda course. And I'll go into the student view so you can see what they see. And so this is all Canvas, but then when we get into the modules, we also have things where people have to go through things one at a time and can't skip things using requirements and such. But I've already gone through part of it, so that's why some of it's checked off in the available, and then down here it's not available anymore. So this is where the Rise comes in and what I call the learning activities. So here's a Rise learning activity that's been embedded in Canvas. Again, using SCORM or XAPI. We're currently using XAPI because it seems to work a little better. as far as how Canvas tracks the requirements and things. And so this is what it ends up looking like in Canvas. And you see it does have this side panel where it tracks the learner's progress, but you can also collapse that. And then it's kind of presented in a scroll, a long scroll. So we have to work with that. It can be very interactive so that we have drag and drop activities. Make this look smaller. And notice I can't actually progress further because I haven't completed this activity yet. Well, I did in the past, so I wouldn't be able to progress until I actually completed the activity. So we do have some control over how much time the learner spends in the course, and especially with things like videos. And then you can also embed knowledge checks and things like this into the lesson. And it gives you immediate feedback in terms of if you got it right or not. You can also add feedback there. And so, yeah, so this is basically what it looks like. There are a lot of things I didn't use in this particular lesson, because I guess the key really to using Rise is choosing the right option for the particular topic you want to teach at that time. So that's what it looks like in Canvas. And now if we go into Rise, I can show you how that content was created. So here are some of those courses. Here's the course we were just looking at in Rise, where it was created. And you can create different lessons to divide up the content, which is always a good instructional design principle, is chunking so that learners can process the information more easily. And so this is where the content was actually created. And when we start a new course, typically we start from scratch. We don't use a template, although templates are available in here. And that's just because our content, we want to be able to choose specific types of blocks, as they're called in Rise, for our specific content. So here's our demo course. I'll give it a name. I can remove or change the feature here. I can put a description. And then I can create a lesson. And as you can see, Rise is very responsive, so that a lot of times you have to do something before you can see the next thing you're able to do. So now this is where you actually add the content. So instead of using this menu below, I usually use this all blocks menu. And I like it especially for people learning Rise, because you can actually see what the content you're adding here is going to look like. So it's got different kinds of text blocks, all pre-formatted, quotes, list, several different ways you can use images. And multimedia is very easy to embed in Rise. We use a lot of images, different kinds of blocks with interactions using images, and then also video and audio as well. And so it's great for multimedia. It's also great for these interactive blocks. And that's the main reason we're using Rise in Canvas, because Canvas and most LMSs, or any LMS I've seen, really doesn't include this level of content creation where you can actually make things interactive and embed knowledge checks and things like that. So these interactive blocks are things like accordion, and you can just, you know, add them and see how they look and then delete them if you don't like them. This labeled graphic is one of my favorites, and I'll show you an example of how we use that if I have time. And another favorite I have is the scenario block. So you can add, and I'll show you an example of that. You can add a different background, you can add different characters, and then you can create, or it has a template that supports you in creating a branched scenario. Okay, let me show you now a couple of those examples, unless anybody has any questions right now. Okay, so in that Bermuda control course, at the very end, I used the scenario block to create an interactive decision tree to help people figure out what kind of approach to take to controlling their Bermuda grass. So this is what it looks like. This is Javier. He's going to walk you through a decision tree that will help you narrow down which treatment options are best suited for you. So first you answer a question. Do you prefer chemical or non-chemical treatment options? Is this a priority for you? So I guess I'll say non-chemical. And then he responds, and then I can continue. And do I want to improve my soil, organic matter? No, that's not a priority for me right now. So I still have options. Okay, so so you can see how this goes. It kind of walks you through the different choices, and then eventually he's going to give you your best options. So I guess for my choices, my best options are for summer treatment are solarization or using glyphosate or torch. And so to create this, I'll just show you a little bit behind the scenes, how it was created. Okay. So here it's kind of created one slide at a time. So you can create scenes, and then here's the first scene, and we can change the character here. We can change the text. We can edit things if we find mistakes when we're showing people. And then, you know, you tell it which slide to go to next, basically. And that's how you create this. And then another one I was going to show you, and I think this will probably be the last thing I show you here, is in a course we did on force emotions. In the horse-human interaction module, in the mounted horse lesson. And so here is an example of how you can use the block here called labeled graphic. And so the learner would then be able to click on these different places in the image and see some kind of specialized presentation. And you can include not only text there, but additional images or videos or audio and different things like that. So I think Rise has been a great tool for us and we'll probably continue to use it. Adobe Articulate does have good support as well. The product isn't cheap though. It's around $600 or $700 per seat. So we have a Teams account, you know, with a number of seats on it. So that does add up. But until we can find something better or cheaper, we probably will continue to use Rise. All right. Let me stop there. And I guess it's time for questions now. For me or
I agree. Thank you, both of you, for sharing how you've been using Captivate and Rise 360. We have about, looks like 13 minutes or so. What questions do you all have for Joan and Petr? You can raise your hand, it's a small group, or put your questions in chat. And while you guys are thinking, I do have a question. I had a question originally about Javier being something provided by Rise, and it looks like he is. So what are your choices? Is it, you have choices on expression and on people and?
yes, yep.
You talk more about that?
I mean, I can actually show it to you, but yes, all of the above. They have a slate of characters. I'd say they probably have about 30 or 40 different characters. You know, different ages. Well, anyway, there's some diversity in some ways, but I have a really hard time finding characters that fit my scenarios, I will admit, because most of them look like they'd be more comfortable in a corporate setting and they're wearing, you know, suits and things. So it's really hard. I use Javier a lot because he's one of the few characters that looks like he could actually be outside doing something.
So you need more plaid shirted characters.
Yeah.
Good to know.
No, I mean, technically you can add your own characters. We talked about it, but it would just be a huge project to do that. You'd have to do a photo shoot with a model, you know, and with different expressions. But yeah, you can change the expressions on their faces and choose a character.
Very cool.
So I have a question that is related to that. So you mentioned about the characters. Is that a possible way that we can add characters, or you can add
Yeah.
drawings of characters or something like that?
I've heard that there is a possible way to do it, but it sounds like it's a lot of work.
Okay.
So, and by the way, let's see, I know Storyline has illustrated characters. I don't think Rise has them though, so we use photo characters for those. Now technically you can upload, you know, your own character images, but like I said, that would be a lot of work. But go for it. By the way, if there is something that Rise absolutely can't do, like maybe some of those drag and drop interactions like Petr was showing us, you can bring in a slide from Storyline and embed it in Rise. And we have done that on occasion.
I'll sound as an Adobe employee now. So I'm only learning now the new Captivate, but it seems that the design and setup that Joan's presenting is what's trending, because a lot of that similar approaches I see in the new Captivate. There is also a library of characters. It also has the option of infinite scroll instead of having screen after screen. It's the content that appears as you are proceeding. So it seems that that's a new normal in the instructional design trends for the future. And for me, it's a mind shift because I grew up with a PowerPoint, and designing individual screens is the way how my brain was used to approach the instructional design. But we will have to switch, and that seems to be the future. Yeah.
I think there will still be a need for something like Storyline because it's a lot more customizable. I mean, you can only go so far in Rise. I think you can do most of the types of activities in Rise that you can do in Storyline, even if you have to do them in a more simple way or something. But there are some things you just can't do in Rise.
How long are your courses in average, Joan?
I would say about 2 hours.
Okay.
We have some that are longer and some that are shorter.
And do you collect statistics whether people finish the course on one sitting or whether they tend to go and return?
Oh, I don't actually. I haven't really looked into that. I mean, I could get some of that through Canvas Analytics. But I will say that we have a very high completion rate for the courses, over 90%. And it would be higher if I wasn't including the courses that our own staff take, because they tend to not finish them. We offer the courses to our staff as well without a fee. But since they're not paying for it, and there's no real tracking of if they finish it or not, they have a much lower completion rate, which drags down our numbers. So
Yeah, in our case, vast majority of people who take the courses take them for continuing education units, and so that's the carrot for them. They have to finish it, otherwise they don't get the unit.
right.
The other group of our participants are college students, because some of the college teachers use our courses as a course material, and they also actually need to get a certificate to prove to their teachers that they finished the courses. So we have also pretty high finishing rate of most of the courses. Yeah.
That's good.
Any other questions? Peter, is the cost comparative with Captivate and Rise?
So we pay per Captivate license $400 per user per year. And currently, when you pay this fee, you get both classic and the new one, so you can compare them or learn whatever. But that price didn't change over the last 7 years. Since we started, it's the same price since 2017.
Wow. Hopefully it'll stay that way.
I hope so.
Okay, if there are no more questions.
I do have one other quick question about the
Go for it, Jennifer.
what is the new version called? The old version is Classic, but what is the new version? I know Captivate can be bundled with the other Adobe products, which we have at University of Florida, and I'm just trying to do a little research on the side. What was the newer version called, and does it come bundled with the other Adobe products?
So that's the funny thing. The new version is called Adobe Captivate. They have kind of identity crisis, I think. They call the development Project Charm, but when they launched it last year in July, they started to call it Adobe Captivate, and the old one they renamed to Classic. Now, when you go to the support material, which is hundreds and hundreds of web pages and videos, it can be very confusing whether they are referring to the old one or the new one. You need to check when that page was created or that video was recorded. Or based on the design that you see on the images, you can guess whether it was an old or new one. Yeah. Now, the question that was asked to Adobe is why the Captivate is not part of the Creative Cloud. And they said that it's very specific product for specific group of users. And if they put it in the cloud, everybody will be contributing. The fee of the cloud will be higher, and many people will be paying for the product that they will never use. So they don't plan to include it in cloud. And so it's up to your organization to negotiate with Adobe whether it will be part of the same package that your university will pay for. For University of California, that didn't happen, so we have to pay for it on top of Creative Cloud.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful.
Sure. They do plan to have a smoother interaction between Captivate and Photoshop or Captivate and Premiere Pro. But it's a future plan. It's not currently implemented in the new one, and it was not part of the old one.
It'll be interesting to see if the new version is seamless, if they decide to merge content. That would be very robust, but wow, what a learning curve.
I agree.
All right, well, thank you everyone for your questions, and there's lots of kind words in chat for both of you. Let's thank Joan and Peter again. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.